So actually, I will tell you what I learned and what I think it's important. Maybe I'm not a very usual example because I'm from a Central Eastern European small country which just joined the European Union in, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I don't remember. And actually, another thing is that I didn't have a mentor because he died in 95, and that's why I became independent. And now I really realize how important it is to have a very good mentor for you, and that's very important when you choose science to choose a very, very good mentor. So, move forward with this. So just very, very briefly, I'm an MD and did PhD, and I also did a business school as well. And I also have a registered clinical pharmacologist exam. So basically I do kind of everything. And the reason I went to science was typically the freedom. I never forget when I was a fourth-year medical student and went to the cardiology department, and they were waiting in a small room for the professor to have the round, and it was 7 p.m. And I decided, so this is not for me. This hierarchical structure is, I will never do it. So I decided to go to research, and that was really the freedom. So. I just show this because I had 2 very short trips abroad. One was at the Free University of Amsterdam when I was still a medical student, and that's also very important to start early. So my very first paper was with one of the Professor Westerhof in the Netherlands, and it was a very successful, only 6 weeks, but we managed to write a paper. We were very lucky, actually. And then I spent about 2 years in Canada, but I always knew that I want to go home and I want to build my career at home. This is just a scientometric data, so what I am very proud of, that I became highly recognized and highly cited 2 times, and I also became president of ISHR, and I was very active in the ESC as well, and all this work was 95% done in Hungary, so you can do it even in a small country as well if you are really dedicated. And of course now the situation is totally different. So I started in Szeged, where vitamin C was discovered, so we felt always the smell of the Nobel Prize, which is also very important to be in an environment where there is, so in a remote environment there is no really a scientific impact, and many scientists together, it's very difficult to do anything. So I started pharmacology, went to physiology, and then went to Edmonton, to Gary Lopaschuk's and Richard Schulz's group, to pharmacology, and then went back to physiology and then biochemistry, where the vitamin C was discovered, and then to Budapest to Semmelweis pharmacology. So I was teaching physiology, biochemistry, pharmacology, which gave me a very broad view. So I want to show some scientific things. Do you know when postconditioning was discovered first? So, postconditioning. They almost say so. So, is this date or this date? 2003. Okay, this is not true. You know why? Everybody quotes American group who discovered postconditioning, although the very first study was done by a Korean group, and they published it in American Heart Journal, but almost nobody cites it. Why? Why do you think? Because they stopped working on this issue, so they totally stopped working on postconditioning, and he forget no. The name is no at all. I don't know. And if you search PubMed and put heart and postconditioning and go to the very last paper, so the very first, and you will immediately find it. So it's very important that you don't, it's not enough to write a nice paper. You have to really sell your research and be persistent to continue on a certain field. So that was the first message. We then recognized first, and we were very lucky doing this, that this extremely important pre- and post-conditioning and remote conditioning just doesn't work in some comorbid issues. And we were the first who published it in 1995. Almost nobody listened to us for many, many years. And but since we believed that this is very important, we kept, chewing this field. And afterwards, more than 10 years afterwards, I got an invitation from the Pharmacological Reviews, which was then elected as a fast-breaking paper. So this is a kind of a citation classic, but we were very lucky to do this first observation. So the message is that you have to really stick to the field if you believe your data, and I will have this slide and one more only. So I never forget, I don't know the name, but it was told to me that you kill this field because of pushing this comorbidity story everywhere. And now we see that in the clinical studies, this conditioning has very, very difficult to translate. And actually, I'm very proud that we stick to this field. And these first observations has been proven. And this paper has been, as a citation classic, it was selected by Science Citation Index as a fast-breaking paper. We had some other issues to show, like we started first the gene expression method. It was also very important that we had a local guy who printed his own DNA chip, and we immediately felt that this will be the future, so we jumped on this field. It's also very important to feel what will be the future, because then you can and start in time. And we also first showed that comorbidities inhibit these cardioprotective pathways as well. And we also showed first that extracellular vesicles contribute to remote conditioning first. So, and this is my last slide, the take-home messages, which I want to go point by point. So what is very important to be a member of a scientific community, especially maybe not for my case because my mentor, so he died, but I was raised by ISHR totally, and afterwards I joined the ESC and was active in this working group. So the other thing is that don't be afraid if you have negative data, even if everybody says the opposite. So if you really believe and you performed your research correctly, and you didn't exclude the data what you didn't like, and you believe in this data, be persistent, and you have to sell these data. It's very, very important if you want to be an independent PI. What I learned also to implement quality control. When I was still very young, one biotech company approached me to lead the cardiovascular group in Western Hungary. It was an investment of Abbott Labs. And of course, I didn't want to give up my independence, so I went there and established my own company. And I said that, okay, you can contract my company, and I will help you. And there I realized that this company uses ISO, I don't know, quality control system. I was totally pissed off that this is not, science cannot be going like this. And after 3 months, I realized that science cannot go without strict quality control like in the industry. Otherwise, you will end up results which is unreproducible and untranslatable. And this is when I first established my own company in 2003 and started to do joint, academic and industrial research. So it's very important to implement quality control and plan the study and then do randomization, blinding, like in the industrial world does. Otherwise, the results will be never translatable. Yeah, the question is a postdoc abroad. These days I find that the students don't really want to leave so much anymore, but at least what I find, but I think it's a must, but very risky. So you have to be really careful picking your postdoc position abroad or somewhere else, because you can end up with a bad mentor and you can lose a couple of years. While if you stay in your own lab, you might really continue publishing, and publish or perish is very important. So patent startup companies, industrial collaborations, of course I am very much pro of it. I thank half of my career because of this small biotech company who insisted me to help in industry, because I started industrial collaborations and started my own companies, and this gives very much flexibility. It gives access to different type of grants as well. There are many Horizon 2020 grants, for example, which is only dedicated to small startup companies. This is totally different world. And also local, at least in Hungary, the local granting system is very much prefers industrial science as well. And what other thing is that it gives you access to high-tech technologies. So just imagine that even if you have a very big grant, can you synthesize silencing RNAs, for example, enough quantity for 100 peaks? No way. So without industrial collaboration, you cannot access to the very high-tech, at least not from Hungary or smaller countries, in very high-tech technologies. And what I also mentioned, that it's very important to feel the future, but how can you feel the future? Only if you read, and only if you go to meetings, and only if you belong to a society and hear everything. And then if you have a broad view, you can feel the future, what is the future. And I think that now the future is the big data and informatics, what will invade all types of biomedical research. And that's why we opened up this special bioinformatics group who uses innovative informatic technologies now, but never forget the experimental validation and also the in vivo data. Never forget in vivo data, because to develop a drug or develop any medical device, in vivo studies will last for 100 years or even more. So, but the tool to be efficient is data and informatics, I think. So, and yeah, for a man, nobody asks if I have family or not. I have, yeah, yes, but I have, yes. So I have, yeah, altogether 5 kids. So yeah, so thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that talk. Do we have any questions? I have a question. So obviously you've been in industry and academia. How do you manage sort of still getting publications when you're working in industry, or does that lag? Do you have a lag whilst you're still trying to publish, and how have you managed that?
Yeah, I think there is a major difference in being industry in a big company, like a big multinational company, or run your own small company, or be a member of a small company. For a small company, publication is a must. That's the cheapest advertisement, let's say. It's just very profane, I would say, but this is a policy of many companies, but some of the big pharma companies have the policy of publication. Some companies have really, they totally neglect this, but of course it's very important to be the patent first. Yeah, and maybe one thing, that if you go to industry and they don't let you publish, then it will be a unidirectional way. You can never enter back to science. While if you leave for industry and keep on publication, you can get back to science anytime. So,
any questions?
Thanks. So obviously you're very successful, and I think everyone here in the front is, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. But in the Netherlands, for example, only 4% of PhD persons in the end get a permanent contract, and otherwise they drop out. So it feels like a very low chance to survive in the academic world. So is it kind of something, how do you deal with that? Or did you think about this?
Look, I tell what I used to tell to my students, that I think to have a PhD is a must, but afterwards you can decide, you have still the freedom to, for example, if you're an MD, you can continue in the clinic, or you can continue in many other parts of the not pharmaceutical industry, but the healthcare industry. You know, the players in the healthcare industry includes the regulatory offices, includes insurance companies, includes small companies, small biotech. You can start your own biotech company, starting with services, for example, or there's a lot opportunity. Pharmaceutical industry is the biggest, largest industry which provides the most economic value addition, unless there is a world war. But otherwise, the pharma industry creates the most value addition, and the players of the pharma industry is very, very wide, you know. So, and also investment companies also needs experts, and so there's a lot of possibilities, I think.
Can I also comment on that? I think that's a very important question. And obviously, as you said, I think it's a bit different from different countries, but overall, a very small minority of people with a PhD who enter the PhD program really stay and be successful. And I think that's, on the one hand, part of the game. That's like it. And you mentioned numerous possibilities. And I think one issue, and I think one mistake we sometimes make, we think it's a failure if people don't go in academia. It's not a failure. I mean, the PhD program or the PhD time is a wonderful time to have an open access to science and learn and train and do many things and then decide to do whatever. So it's not a failure if you don't go in academia. And it's very clear that you need, I mean, I think that was Gemma that did this wonderfully, you need quite a special set of wishes and features and capabilities to survive that system, and it can't be for everybody. So what? So it should be only for those who really think they are gifted or who are really determined, and all the others. I mean, the world is wide.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. For example, the Semmelweis University, we have a program of building up a kind of innovation ecosystem, which will create a lot of different companies around the university, which can soak up, for example, these PhD people with PhD degree, which has also helps the economy and also helps the university and the research output of the university.
Got one more question.
Really nice talk. What I wanted to ask you was that how did you manage to do your postdoc or your professorship along with having your own companies and also having your own family? So like having your company is also like having your baby, and having like your own project is also like having your own company. So and it's so much like a
yeah, that's a good question. So we usually scientists work 24 hours a day plus a night. As Gemma told, but the major importance is I can always decide which day I work. It's a lot of work, definitely, but you can somehow, and you can delegate. You have a team. It's very important to have a team. I just didn't. I forgot to mention that also. It's a very important message that try to learn from others' mistakes and not on for your own mistake. I had to learn always on my own mistakes because I didn't have a mentor. And the team building is extremely important. Actually, that's why I made a business school and learned management as well, because that's also a science. Although we hardcore medical science, the scientists, we think that it's all bullshit. It's not bullshit. So I'm sorry, but it's management is really a science, and you have to build up your team. It's very important.
Okay, one more.
maybe a small comment on because it could be really depressive if you're in the audience and hearing this numbers of 4% and what to do. And I think if you're just interested in science, as we all do, if you start your PhD and you just follow your gut feeling and you love what you do, you will find your path. And this is also what Thomas is mentioning. Failing, not getting the PI or being the professor in academia is not a failure. Basically, you'll find another path. And I think that's what the staff as well here wants to bring over, is like, well, find your opportunities and you'll find your path. And I think that's the best thing. Just try to plan, but you cannot plan everything. Even the 3 stories you saw today, of course, it sounds like it's a perfect planning, but this is a success story. And if you look back, you can find your path, but we didn't know when we started. So just follow your gut feeling and do what you like, and think 2 steps ahead, talk to your mentors, and go from there.
Yeah. Thanks very much for this comment, because I think that you guys, you belong to this 4% because you are very motivated because you came to this summer school. You know, every student don't spend time on summer schools, you know, and so you are kind of a selected population. So, thank you very much.
So I think we've had a really interesting discussion. If you do have more questions, please speak to our speakers during the coffee break. I think we've got another 10 minutes before we're back in here.